Godzilla, or Gojira as he's known to the Japanese, has been stomping across Japan and other areas of the globe for over 60 years. His first appearance in Japan was in Gojira in 1954, and then again in America in Godzilla King of the Monsters in 1956. The American version was edited down to appeal to American audiences, even going so far as to cut scenes into the film with American actor Raymond Burr. Much of the political, social, and anti-nuclear themes were removed, and although I didn't think that Raymond Burr did a bad job, his scenes didn't match the level of fear and terror caused from the devastation being done before him, especially when compared to the Japanese acted portions of the movie. Gojira, the original version, had been shown with subtitles in America, although it was only shown in some select Japanese community theaters. Godzilla is obviously one of the most important and one of the most popular kaiju creations of all time. He spawned a new era of films that use suit actors to portray the monsters, and is still one of the most watched film franchises to date. The movie was released by Toho Studios, and then directed by Ishiro Honda. The special effects and suit designs were done by Eiji Tsuburaya. The suit actor who got the awesome task of destroying all of those beautiful miniature sets was Haru Nakajima. In the film, there is no fully explained origin story for Godzilla. The paleontologist does state that he believes that the monster was an intermediate creature from when sea creatures were first coming to land during the Cretaceous period. He notes that both Gojira and the trilobite found in his footstep from the island contained high amounts of strontium-90 radioactive material, and that could only be present from a nuclear bomb. One of the most interesting parts that I noticed when viewing Gojira, the Japanese version of the movie, is that the island natives knew of Gojira before the first attacks and sightings in the movie. Early on in the movie, the old man says the boat wrecks from the beginning of the movie is from Godzilla. A younger girl tells him that he and Godzilla are both relics of the past. This proves that the islanders at least knew of Godzilla before his first sightings in the movie. The old man later states that on the island, when fishing was poor, they would sacrifice a girl to prevent Godzilla from eating them. The islanders then perform a ritualistic exorcism in order to rid them of Godzilla, and then the old man states that the exorcism is one of the only traditions left of Godzilla. The old man states that all this knowledge is from the old times. I believe the old times that he's referenced to has got to be older than 5 to 6 years, which is when the bombs drop. So they obviously dealt with a version of Godzilla from before the bombs. Although we know of other Godzilla creatures in the Godzilla series, they offer no proof of other Godzilla creatures during the 1954 film. Ishiro Honda filmed Godzilla's rampage on Tokyo with the mentality that the monster's onslaught was a parallel to and a physical manifestation of an atom bomb attack. He stated, if Godzilla had been a dinosaur or some other animal, he would have been killed by just one cannonball. But if he were equal to an atomic bomb, we wouldn't know what to do. So I took the characteristics of an atomic bomb and applied them to Godzilla. Early drafts of the film portrayed a much different kaiju than the one we all know and eventually saw on screen. Shigeru Kumaya's first plot outline, submitted on May 2nd, 1954, had the primary motivation for Godzilla being to feed, and he even had a thing for human women, much like King Kong did. This draft even included a sequence of the creature attacking a tanker full of livestock. Tsurabaya submitted an outline of his own, written 3 years before. It featured a giant octopus attacking ships in the Indian Ocean. His team eventually decided to base Godzilla's design on dinosaurs. By using dinosaur books and magazines as a reference, they combine elements of the Tyrannosaurus rex, Iguanodon, and the Stegosaurus. Although it's hard to tell with the movie being in black and white, the first Godzilla suit, or Shodai Goji as it's called, meaning first Goji, or first Godzilla suit, was actually brown, and not green like the suits were later on. The suit itself is usually dark gray or black in most of the films, but the 1956 Godzilla King of Monsters movie poster did show him as green. It wasn't until 1999 when they started making the suit green. Even so, Godzilla has been represented as green in the media and throughout Japan and the rest of the world. The iconic suit stood at 6.5 feet tall and weighed in at over 200 pounds. The first person to don the Godzilla suit was Haruo Nakajima, and he portrayed the Big G from the first movie in 1954 all the way through the early 70s into Godzilla vs. Gigan. He played Godzilla in 12 straight movies and was also in many other Toho non-Godzilla kaiju films such as Rodan, Baron, Mothra, Frankenstein vs. Baragon, War of the Gargantuas, and King Kong Escapes. He also appeared in the Ultraman series on TV. The suit, as seen in the first picture, does have some differences from the later on suits besides color. It also had more of a horror look to portray the fear that they wanted to get across in the first movie. The ears were more pronounced, and he had sharper teeth with actual fangs. The arms were a little smaller than later suits as well. His tail was short and ended up with a point instead of the rounded tail we see later on in the series. The back had one row of spines, with two smaller rows adjacent to the main set. Haruo, the suit actor, lost 20 pounds during filming from sweat and moving around in the suit. He could only spend about 3 minutes at a time in the suit and was covered in blisters by the end of filming. That suit itself weighed 220 pounds and was 2 meters tall. Akira Ifukube, the film's composer, created the iconic Godzilla Roar for the film. They ended up using a contrabass, similar to a cello, and then wearing a leather glove that had been soaked in pine tar and rubbing it against the strings. An echo chamber effect was then added for the final roar sound. Although hard to verify, director Ishiro Honda had noted several times that the name Gojira came from a nickname given to a large fellow who worked in Toho's publicity department. Some noted him as being as large as a gorilla, while others took it as far as saying the guy was as big as a whale. Eventually, the two names were combined into a singular nickname which producer Tomoyuki Tanaka liked and wanted to use as the name of the title character in his film. The real name and position of the man nicknamed Gojira, from where the monster's name was meant to have originated from though, has never turned up. This gives the story, even though widely circulated and noted by many of the staff that were involved in the film, a large probability that it's false, and it's become more of a legend around the name. It has since been confirmed that Godzilla's Japanese name Gojira is actually devised from the Japanese words for gorilla and whale. In his first film, Godzilla is said to weigh in at over 20,000 metric tons and has a height of over 50 meters tall. His power set is pretty similar to later films in the series. One noticeable difference is the atomic breath. It would burst objects into flames or just melt them due to their extreme heat. Most likely, due to special effects of the time and budget constraints, the breath attack in the first Godzilla is more of a mist than what it evolved to in later films. It's hard to tell the color of the blast either, since the film is done in black and white. He was ultra durable in the first confrontation, taking 50,000 volts of electricity and shells from both the 155mm howitzer M1 and the M24 Chafee tank. Planes had no effect either, although they did seem to get his attention. Godzilla was also very radioactive, causing areas he went to become unsafe. He was, however, killed at the climax of the film with the oxygen destroyer. Besides the oxygen destroyer, no other weapons really had any effect on Godzilla. In the end, Godzilla is much more than just a kaiju, especially when you look at Gojira in the 1954 film separately. In that film, he was more of a metaphor. Japan had just dealt with the worst air raids in history during World War II, not to mention the dropping of 2 atomic bombs. In one firebombing that took place in just one night, over 100,000 people were killed. These raids were usually performed at night, and so were the attacks from Godzilla in the film. The horrors of atomic weapons had been released twice on Japan in August 6th and on August 9th of 1945. In March of the same year that Gojira was released in Japan, the crew of a boat called the Daigo Fukuro Maru, or Lucky Dragon 5, had been fishing off the Marshall Islands. Just before dawn, they saw a blinding flash in the sky and heard what sounded like a thunderclap. Before long, a white ash began to settle on the decks of their vessel. The sailors then shoveled this dust in heaps over the side of the boat. By the evening, several of them were vomiting and covered in strange burns. When the boat got back to port, it was clear that these men were suffering from radiation sickness. The sailors had encountered fallout from a test that the Americans had done unknowing to the crew of one of the largest bombs to date. This incident further put the public on edge right before the release of the film. At the time in Japan, talk of war or atomic weapons was considered taboo, but the director was able to get his views of a post-World War II Japan and the effects of atomic weapons under the guise of a monster movie. Godzilla is obviously one of the most important and popular kaiju creations of all time. He spawned a new era of kaiju films that use suit actors to portray the monsters, and is still one of the most watched film franchises to date. It's a worldwide phenomenon that reaches over generations. One of my earliest childhood memories are tearing through TV Guide every week, trying to see if anyone was going to do any weekend marathons of Godzilla. Godzilla continues on today in the Legendary universe, as well as the Toho produced universe with Shin Godzilla and the upcoming Godzilla anime. In total, the Big G has appeared in 29 Japanese Gojira films and 2 American films. The Godzilla series has also been translated into many different languages for viewing around the world. He's even had 2 animated cartoon series in America and been mentioned or parodied anywhere you look. You can find him in commercials, clothing, toys, comic books, and video games. Both Gojira and Godzilla King of Monsters started a worldwide phenomenon that reaches over generations in different countries. What do you guys think of Godzilla? Have you seen Gojira or just Godzilla King of Monsters? You really should see both, but I have to say I like Gojira much more than King of Monsters. What was your first Godzilla movie? Do you have a favorite kaiju you want me to cover in later profile videos? Let me know down in the comments. Also, what do you guys think of a Godzilla pre-1954? Did the Islanders really see him before that? Would you guys like to see a Toho prequel? I'd love to know what you think. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.